Here we go, back at it again, getting you going here on this Monday, getting you set for the entire week. As we got a big weekend coming up again. And that's the beauty of the summer months, especially in horse racing. Every single weekend, there's a stakes race, there's some action, and they're all important because it leads up to what's happening with Breeders' Cup coming up at the end of October, beginning of November. So all this is like really valid information. You got to find a way to retain. Okay, first things first. We saw a week ago journalism doing what he does, winning the Haskell, right? And he had to overcome some stuff, and he barely gets up, not barely, but he gets up in time in the end. Just the other day, we see Sovereignty in the Jim Dandy just handling his business. Short field, he was able to stay a little bit closer and then just easily powered right past them. So it's cool to see what's happening with the rivalry between these two horses. Journalism is intriguing. Sovereignty is the best, absolutely. It's just nice that these two are doing what they're doing. Just makes it far more interesting when we get to the Breeders' Cup Classic. Now, of course, you have to deal with some older horses, and that's what's going to be really intriguing for these runners. By the time they get to that point, are they strong enough to deal with the likes of the Sierra Leones, Mind Frame, Fierceness, Skippy Longstocking? Like, these are serious runners that are in that particular area. Of course, the thing that's really intriguing is just watching these horses develop. So we saw what happened there. So now we'll see as things continue to develop. Look, I do have a comment about Baeza. This is a horse that I completely disregarded before the Derby. He ran a great Kentucky Derby. You know who else ran a great Kentucky Derby? Final Gambit. We're not talking about him anymore, right? About this. So I'm not talking about Baeza anymore. That horse does not belong in the conversation. He's this year's Hot Rod Charlie. A horse that's always running, but he's not going to win a big race. He's just not going to do it. But he is fun to be all excited about. He's not going to factor. Anyway, let's start talking about things that do matter. Hey, we got to talk to you about a great weekend that we had. Let's get into our weekend winner recap. We've been talking about things, not going well. Horses have been scratching. They've been changing surfaces. And then our horses that are in the race are not running well. They're just bad picks. Can't do anything about that. You just keep on going and try to get it to go in the right direction. Got it to go in the right direction this weekend, and we talked about the fact that we really liked Almond Joy with Hall of Famer Kent DeSormo in the Fleet Treat, and he did a great job. It was good Kent DeSormo, right? Good Kent DeSormo, perfect placing, horses trained and ready to go, and we get $7 back on a horse that I thought would have been a shorter priced favorite. Then, because that was Friday, on Saturday, everything came together for a horse that we like quite a bit. Lovesick Blues pays almost $40 to win the Bing Crosby, and exactly the way we drew it up. We knew the horse would be picking him up and laying him down in the stretch. He did just that. Giovanni Franco was awesome. Had a couple of winners over the course of the weekend. Almost had a third. Upstart Yankee, our other pick, who went off at 15-1. Just came up short. So we think things are going in the right direction. So let's take that money that we have made, and now we're going to move it on through and get ready for another great weekend of action. So talked about the older horses, and they're coming up in the Grade 1 Whitney Stakes, coming up Saturday at Saratoga, 1.125 miles on the dirt. 10 runners in this race. There are so many good runners here. My goodness. The thing about this is the majority of them, they're proven one way or the other, right? Like they've shown that they can do certain things in certain races given the proper conditions, right? Now, we're not sure what's going to happen with Mind Frame and Fierceness. One of those two will have to scratch out. But we still have so many interesting runners. We talked about Skippy Longstocking. Highland Falls is intriguing. Mama's Gold is the clear speed. Not lone speed, but clear speed. And if they happen to scratch Fierceness, well, that's going to make things extremely interesting because Mama's Gold could possibly get away. Contrary thinking, got some speed. The horse that really intrigues me is White Barrio. He can sit at any spot that he wants, and he'll get the jump on the closers, and that makes him extremely dangerous. But in this particular race, I really feel like your Breeders' Cup Classic winner from a year ago, Sierra Leone, is the one to play. I just love the way this horse is very honest, always makes his move. You know how I really like powerful closers, and Sierra Leone is that kind of runner. He's going to have to deal with White Barrio in the stretch. That's the only horse that I'm actually afraid of, to be honest with you, is White Barrio. And I actually kind of vacillated between the two, but I ended up going with Sierra Leone because I think he has a better closing kick and they're all classy. So this is going to be really intriguing to get a look at some of the horses that are the older, experienced horses that'll be kind of waiting for journalism and sovereignty and any other 3-year-olds that want to step up when it comes Breeders' Cup Classic time. So Sierra Leone is our pick in the Grade 1 Whitney, and I don't know how much value we'll get. I think it depends upon whether mind frame or fierceness are in the race. One of those two will take some money. That's happening on Saturday. Right before that, we're going to check in with the fillies going in the 7-furlong test stakes. That's Saturday at Saratoga. 8 runners in this field here. You know, there's not a tremendous amount of like blazing speed in the race, and going 7 furlongs, that could be pretty dangerous. But we know that me and Molly McGee got some speed, right? And then Artisma has some speed as well. And everyone else just kind of can sit or rate. You know, we know that Kilwin is kind of a, not a deep closer, but a nice closer. Look forward, sits off the pace. But when it comes to this type of situation, I'm going to go with one, the connections that I trust, and two, a horse that I think has the right running style for the 7 furlongs. 7 furlongs is tricky. I'm going to go with Bob Baffert's Cash Call. I like what they've done with this horse, right? 6.5, 6, as in furlongs. So I'm going to make sure I say that right. 6 furlongs. And then they kind of decided to go, let's go a route of ground, right? Go 1 mile and a 16th there in the Summer Oaks. And I thought that was a really nice performance. And that's the kind of running style that I think will really, really be perfect for the 7 furlongs. Hopefully that this filly ships. And I think Cash Call, I think probably going to be second or third choice. I don't think they'll be a heavy favorite. But that's where we're going to go in the Grade 1 test. That's coming up on Saturday as well. But wait, there's more. There's also the Grade 1 Saratoga Derby Invitational on the turf course. 1 mile and 3/16. You get 9 runners in this field here. Now, this one's interesting because we don't have a tremendous amount of pace. But what I'm looking at is a runner that I know what they're going to do, and I trust them. And you know who it is just by looking at this list, right? You can see these runners that we've seen before, and they're really talented, especially when it comes to running on the turf course. You've got a couple of Triple Crown runners in here, in the form of Tistastic, who actually won 2 races on the turf before he went to the dirt to try to make it into the Derby, and then Final Gambit, who didn't win over the turf but ran a really great race over the turf before they switched to synthetic, and then before, of course, he made his move to the dirt. He doesn't belong on the dirt. The Derby was a cool experiment, but Final Gambit does not belong on the dirt. This is where Final Gambit belongs, on the turf course. And here's what I'm liking. I mentioned how this race doesn't have a whole lot of pace and Final Gambit needs a setup. Problem is he's been too far back in his races, leaving him with too much to do. So what does Brad Cox do? He puts the blinkers on this runner. And I like what this runner did in the race on the turf last time out. You should go back and watch that race. It says 7th, but only beaten by 2 lengths. So they were all coming home, and so was Final Gambit. Just didn't have enough room to get there. Now they put the blinkers on. Look at those last 2 workouts with the blinkers on. Obviously, huge improvement for this horse. So Final Gambit has a natural kick. All he needs to do is just be a little bit closer and not have so much work to do. That's what he's going to get on Saturday. That's my pick, the 3, Final Gambit. We weren't able to get all the money in the Derby. We got a nice run, but I think we're going to get exactly what we want coming up in the Saratoga Derby Invitational, Saturday at Saratoga on the turf with Final Gambit. All right, that's how we get you going. We made some money over the weekend, so that's great. When we make our way into what's happening this week, get our plays of the day going, coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday. And of course, we'll get that good momentum going into the weekend. Shouldn't have any weather for Saratoga. That should be a great Saturday. And of course, every weekend at Del Mar is fantastic. And we'll get set to do that again. See if our money man, Giovanni Franco, has got any more live mounts to get us out of trouble. All right, that's going to do it for us here on episode number 116. In the meantime, in between time, until next time, I'm Ken Rudulph. We'll see you here on Horse Race Bets. Good luck and enjoy whatever you're into.